Hello! Welcome to another video by Rick Miracle, me. In my series, Freemasonry and Satanism, number 78, Part 1, another book on the Philadelphia Experiment by William Moore, in consultation with Charles Berlitz, author of the Bermuda Triangle. The startling account of a ship that vanished and returned to damn those who knew why. Is all this real? UFOs, aliens, interdimensional beings, Jesus casting out unclean spirits, prophesizing what was to be done ahead, telling Peter before he was crucified, 3 times you will deny me. And Peter said, no way. Paraphrasing, of course. And then when he realized after they had arrested Jesus and were questioning him because he had been seen with Jesus, he denied that he knew Jesus. So I guess the question is, what's real? Are we spiritual beings in these biological bodies? Is there life after death? Aleister Crowley, in his Hiawassee creature that he was in communication with, called a master, looks like a gray alien. Reptilian creatures, supposedly people in high places, the Queen of England, and other people, shape-shifting. What is real? And there's plenty of evidence in history, throughout history, of prophecy. So if you can see what's in the future, or even the government with remote viewers that we've gone over in my previous videos, Tim Rifat, David Morehouse, psychic research I've been going over, the Freemasons, the Illuminati, witchcraft, Zionism, Jesuits, Rosicrucians, Kabbalah people, witchcraft. What kind of occult, secret things can they do? And what use of these powers and knowledge do they use to work against we the people? Tell me where I'm wrong in this conversation. Prophecy is well documented. Witchcraft, Kabbalah, supposed time travel, UFOs, alien beings. So many books written, so many witnesses, so many people killed to shut them up. Sky spraying in the sky of chemicals, and they don't tell us why. HARP systems, those transmitters, mind control at Montauk. The Sphinx, the pyramids. Lebanon, those gigantic stones the size of a building. Peru, the big gigantic drawings on the ground you can only see with a plane. Ecuador, the gigantic caves Eric von Donovich wrote about. The gold plates with the language. All over the world are these monuments to a clear statement of fact that something did exist prior to the civilization we have today, and obviously greater civilization than we have today, because we can't duplicate like those stones at Baalbek. Gigantic, 1 block of stone, the size of a 2- or 3-story building, quarried from miles away and moved to Baalbek, Lebanon. Underground facilities, is that true? In the Transylvania Sunrise book we went over, the beginning of this Montauk, Peter Moon, Preston Nichols, Al Bebeck, and others, Marathon. So can they use electronics and magnetics to create a vortex, like when you pull the plug on the bathtub or the sink, you see the water swirling down, a vortex. A tornado is like a vortex. Can there be an anomaly of electromagnetic energy that when it creates a vortex, it creates a time portal? So just for the open-minded sake, when I read this stuff and add my commentary, take it with a grain of salt and a little humor. But if we continue on with this investigation, we may be able to put some of the pieces of the puzzle together and get some answers, which is why I do such a wide variety of books in my series Freemasonry and Satanism, which I could say, as I've been saying all along, Freemasonry, Satanism, Zionism, Jesuits, Illuminati, Bilderberger Group, Bohemian Grove, Kabbalah, Witchcraft, Hollywood, Club of Rome, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, the Rainbow Coalition, New Age, the Gay Agenda, the Catholic Church, Buddhism, Hinduism, all these religions, these gods. That could have been the title of this series, instead of simplifying it. Freemasonry and Satanism. And Freemasonry basically is, in my opinion, for the description of this series I'm doing, all the mystery school of Babylon cults out there, lodges and temples, including the Zionists. Don't they have the Kabbalah and all that kinds of interesting 72 names of God and magic? What about voodoo? Remote viewers, dowsers, people who can use a pendulum to find water, psychics that people go see to get readings. It's all connected. It's my opinion. So I thought I'd jump in the middle of this book. I scanned the beginning and I read quite thoroughly, page per page, starting at chapter 4. I kind of have a good idea. I looked through the beginning here, and I've gone over numerous books on the Philadelphia experiment. And I'm not trying to do an audio book here. I'm doing a book review, and I like to highlight passages and read them and have commentary to give some credibility in what I'm doing, because a lot of people have told me, yeah, Rick, you're right, something weird is going on, but what? Who? What's behind it? So I thought by doing book reviews and showing the stuff in the book might be helpful. Alright, so moving on. Did the so-called Philadelphia experiment really happen? During the years since Jessup's death, the controversy has continued to rage, occasionally enhanced by bits of new evidence, but with the basic mystery remaining unsolved. So Jessup, who was Jessup? He was a scientist. And he wrote a book, The Case for UFOs. And back in the 60s, 50s, 70s, there were a lot of UFO buffs out there, investigators, authors. I've got a lot of those books. We're going to review them, maybe with more clarity because of this particular marathon of books I'm doing since series number 73, and this is 78. So anyways, Jessup wrote this book, a rare manuscript it says, The Case for UFOs, and he was a scientist. Here's a picture of him. But apparently somebody got a hold of his books, marked them up in different colored pen, and sent the books back. Sent them to the military, Navy. Here's a sample. I just flipped it open. You can see the different type of typing. And some of it's bold and underlined. Apparently there were these three beings, humans or otherwise. Being A, being B, being C. They think C, one of them is this Carlos Allende, also known as Carl Allen. So here is Morris Jessup writing this book about UFOs. I'll read one little sample here. So according to the author, Morris Jessup, the man is close, too close. That's what one of the beings wrote in this book. And according to Jessup, he said, is this then a hint that we are at this moment awakening? And like a chrysalis emerging into a new, much more powerful state of existence and cognizance. Are therefore our current troubles domestically and internationally, but the excruciating birth pains of such a renaissance as we could not have imagined. This is the Professor Jessup writing this, the investigator, UFOs, aliens. One short generation ago, could we not have imagined it? Will we then perhaps be welcomed rather than repelled by intelligences that inhabit the UFOs, or which may even be the UFOs? So one of the entities writes, man's emotional structure is such that he cannot awaken to powers of true thinking. All right, so it was not through the man, it was not thought that man would ever mature. Don't worry, Jemmy. So, like I said, these entities, whatever they were, where my fingers are, made notations to Jessup's material in his book, which would be, apparently came from Carlos Allende. The Allende letters, as it says here, are included along with the edited edition of Jessup's book. So two pieces of evidence. Jessup writes a book about a case for UFOs. The book comes back to the Navy, all marked up with notations. They go find Jessup and they say, what's with all this? Jessup doesn't know what to make of it, but he reads it. And it seems like it's from some intelligence beings editing and correcting his book that he wrote. And then add that to Carlos Allende sending letters to Jessup talking about the Philadelphia experiment, the Allende letters. So we have several things involved here. Did the Navy, using Einstein's theory of relativity, accidentally discover time travel? What they were trying to do was actually logical, is put antenna transmitters around the ship, turn them on, and make the ship invisible to the enemy's radar. Little did they expect it would become invisible to the human sight. And then when the ship reappeared, some of the crew were half in and half out of the bulkhead, embedded in the steel. The other ones were mentally insane. So there's several things. And apparently, they say that aliens were involved with the government, helping to assist with these technologies in trade to be able to abduct humans for experiments and other uses, as some of us think they use it for food or to assimilate themselves create entities with the body parts from humans and animals. It's a conversation. So now that I've explained all that, we can get back to the book. Another book on the Philadelphia experiment. More evidence. That's all I'm trying to do. Keep the conversation going. More evidence, more evidence, more evidence from different points of view, different authors, different perspectives. Then we can make up our own mind. And what's that got to do with Freemasonry and Satanism? Well, the Illuminati banksters, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, kings and queens, and people who run this planet, control our politicians. They're behind the financing of all this stuff. They have the technologies. They know what's going on. We, the citizens, are not aware. That could be detrimental to our health, our wealth, our freedom, the existence of our children and their children's children, slavery, the new age, the new world order. See how it all fits? If they're into this stuff, and it's real, being informed might behoove us. So did the so-called Philadelphia experiment really happen? During the years since Jessup's death, so they found Jessup in his car in Florida with the tailpipe, with a hose, rerouting it while the car's running, back into the car. He was exposing too much. Some say he was murdered. All right. Next page on this book, and I'm only doing my highlighted portions. Go buy the book. I'm not trying to do a audiobook. Give credit where credit is due. All right, moving on. While Sherby and Hoover's initial involvement seems to have stemmed from their interest in uncovering possible clues to the secrets of anti-gravity and UFO propulsion, interest has continued over the years for a whole variety of reasons, ranging all the way from simple curiosity to theoretical physics. Einstein's unified field theory is even today a misty, little understood concept. The mysteries that may eventually be unlocked by some future application of that theory could well be more staggering to the world than it was to development of the atomic power, the bomb, from E = mc squared. Those who read Allende's letters did not reject them out of hand as mere rubbish or the ravings of a psychopath. So Carlos Allende was supposedly on a ship with the ship Eldridge passing by when it disappeared. He witnessed it, along with others. And later on he wrote letters to Morris Jessup about this. That's why it says the Allende letters. And then, of course, somebody, 3 entities, marked up his book, The Case for UFOs, and discussed some other similar subjects. In short, those who took the trouble to question whether there might possibly be some elements of truth in them found their minds whirling with speculations about a host of unfathomable subjects. If, in fact, the Navy did somehow succeed, either by accident or design, in creating force field invisibility, or even teleportation, the instantaneous transfer of solid objects from one place to another would obviously be of serious interest to the powers that be, who seem to be war-minded, conquering nations, creating a new world order and a new age. For example, might not the results of such experiments also offer some clues towards explaining the strange series of events, disappearances that seem to plague the area popularly known as the Bermuda Triangle, where electromagnetic clouds seem to herald the disappearance of planes or ships. See what I'm saying? The more you research this and consider other things, like the Bermuda Triangle, you've got to admit, we've all got to admit, there are some strange happenings in the world. What? Moving on, next page, page 86. Even Jessup, the author there, Morris Jessup, was guilty of thinking it's just too fantastic to believe. So even the people writing the books, but they get witnesses telling them. Look up the UFO reporting sites right now. This is the last day of 2015, December 31st. And go look up UFO reporting sites on the internet. People are reporting UFOs and sightings of weird anomalies all over the world almost every day right now. So there are either two things. One, there are some kind of alien UFO ships out there. Or number two, it's our government trying to create some kind of paradigm shift in reality. The Illuminati, Bilderbergers, Bohemian Grove, Banksters, Zionists, Vatican. Turn away from God, destroy Christianity, and believe in UFO and aliens and the threat. Which is it? A big propaganda campaign? Or aliens and ships? Which? Have they lived on Earth all along? Are they only surfacing now? Which apparently, according to this Philadelphia experiment, right after that ship's invisibility experiment, it's when UFOs were popping up everywhere. What's with CERN in Geneva, Switzerland? The birthplace of the Frankenstein books and stories, Geneva. The homeland or the home base for the Illuminati for 1,000 years, Geneva, Switzerland. That's two interesting coincidences. The birthplace of the Frankenstein stories, myth, and the base for the Illuminati, the secret mystery school of Babylon cults. The people who have secret organizations control all the Freemasonic lodges all over the world and more. Rosicrucians, whatever. Then they build CERN with the 3-6 logo and a statue of the goddess of destruction, Shiva, out front with the many arms. Too many coincidences here, methinks. The more one tried to discount the story, the more one found one confronted by evidence that seemed to support it. Just reading my highlighted portions, things that jumped out at me that I wanted to share. Okay, according to Carlos Miguel Allende, the witness who was on a ship and saw the Navy ship, the Aldrich, disappear, according to him, and apparently there's a couple spooky things about him, he seems to have more knowledge than he should be for what his job description was. But according to him, Dr. Albert Einstein's unified field theory was in fact completed in 1927, but Dr. Einstein withdrew it because he was allegedly horrified by the possible uses it might be put. to by mankind and not be ready for it yet. So, according to this guy, when Einstein was creating his unified theory, and what's interesting about his unified theory, I'm a little bit of a techie guy, but we all know how electricity and magnetism go hand in hand. Those big turbines that turn around with gigantic magnets on them, through the process of induction, passing by, let's say, a wire, it creates a pulse in the wire, changes the polarity. So that's how you get 60 hertz AC in your wall of your home to plug in your appliances. Gigantic turbines with magnets inducting with the magnetic field crossing the wire, pulses. And they use transformers to build them up and capacitors to supply, or I should say store, some of the energy. So we know about electricity. We use it for our appliances. We know about magnets. The scientists have formulas. They understand that. They do not understand gravity. But they know that gravity is the third component to our reality besides electricity and magnetism. So if you could use a mathematical formula, calculus, algebra, trigonometry, all that stuff, apparently the equation would be about 16 different variables. Instead of A times B equals C, it would be A times B divided by D to the F power times G divided by H times K. In other words, 16 or 18 variables for all these different things. 6 of them for gravity and 10 of them for electricity and magnetism. So this gigantic formula, plugging in all these components. Once you understand how the formula works, the unified theory, and then you want to cause different effects, all you do is change the values of the components. So like A times B equals C, 2 times 3 equals 6, and if you want to change 6, you change A, so it's 4 times 3, now it equals 12. So once you understand the formula, you can plug in different numbers and change the different results. It's way over my head. If it's over your head, I understand. But just the idea, they're trying to come up with mathematical formulas that include gravity. So anyways, doing this with the electromagnetic fields around the ship, turning them on, like a transformer, the ship disappeared. When it reappeared, people were half in and half out of the bulkheads. Einstein, it says here, mankind is not ready for this kind of knowledge. And they found out it had another effect. If they can control it and created a vortex, they could open up a time portal. They could look down into the tunnel and see the past or the future. And apparently, to understand the Montauk Project, they were abducting thousands and thousands of young boys, experimenting with them, pushing them into these time portals, knowing they couldn't retrieve them. The ones they did retrieve, if they left the portal open, then of course they would question the boys, what did you see? Pretty horrific. And apparently at Project Montauk, they found a whole mountain of bones from the dead boys. That's why I'm doing book reviews. It might behoove us to be aware of this. And is it real? Or is somebody creating all these books? What if that's the truth? If they're creating all these books, why? When they say this stuff is true and witnesses are saying this, if it's all propaganda, a grand deception, why? So in either case, it's concerning. If it's true and they have this knowledge, it's concerning. If it's false, it's concerning because why? would they be changing the perception of reality, the paradigm? Just a little recap here. This is a very old book I have. Atlantis. So I need to go over this book thoroughly. Look at some of the pictures in this book. Old one. So is all this a fabrication? Where's the truth? Edgar Cayce on Atlantis. Virginia Beach, Virginia. They have an Edgar Cayce Institute. 16,000 readings this guy gave. Went into a trance. Retrieved information of cures for people with diseases and ailments. For the first half of the 16,000, maybe 8,000. Then he started doing life readings. I got to read this book again. What's it say about Atlantis? How does it jive with all this other stuff? The Philadelphia Experiment and other UFO conspiracies. We're going to have to take a look at this book. More books on these subjects. Blue Blood, True Blood. Another person who was involved in Montauk. What does he have to say? I read this one a while back. Very bizarre information. The Philadelphia Experiment Murder. We've been going over this book in my recent videos. The Montauk Project. Preston Nichols, Peter Ramone. The Black Sun. Nazis, Hitler. The Occult, Himalayas, Tibetan. Shambhala. Mount Busigi in Romania. With tables and chairs that only a giant can sit in. And holographic technologies that we don't have today. That showed the past. That would have been in this book. Transylvania Sunrise. So what was that? Inside that mountain with technologies that certainly exceed the technologies we have today. But they do say, many have said, researchers, investigators, that the government has technology at least 25, probably 100 years ahead of what we have today. And again, I'll repeat what I've been saying all along. Take the line from here to here. 2,000 years. Where was the growth? Almost up to today's age, there was very little technological growth. But in the last 100 years, it's gone off the charts. In the last 100 years, we got radio, TV, computers, laptops, cell phones, holographic images we can make. This fantastic technologies, all within the last 100 years. How far has it gone? What can they do? What should we know? Should we be informed? Apparently, Morris Jessup was murdered, found in his car. So moving on, during World War II, the concepts of the unified field theory were tested by the Navy with a view to any and every possible quick use of it, if feasible, in a very short time. Someone called Dr. Franklin Reno, a man Allende refers to as my friend, allegedly had something to do with producing results at this stage of the game. The results thus produced were used to achieve complete invisibility of a ship, destroyer type, and all of its crew while at sea, October 1943. By means of some sort of energy or force field, which had been created around the ship, The men on the ship were apparently able to see one another vaguely, but all that could be seen by anyone outside of the field was the clearly defined shape of the ship's hull in the water. The phone ringeth. Got to keep my day job. Make some money, pay the rent, eat, car insurance, and the time to make these videos and buy more books. Alright, moving on. So the results that thus produced, were used to achieve complete invisibility of a ship, a destroyer type, and all its crew while at sea, by means of some sort of energy or force field which had been created around the ship. The effects of this invisibility, creating force field, upon the men involved were, according to Allende, disastrous. The experiment, he says, was a complete success, but the men were a complete failure. There was a special berth for the experimental ship at the Philadelphia Naval Yard. So apparently, something appeared in the Philadelphia newspaper, describes the sailors' activity after their initial voyage, where they raided a local bar, allegedly the Seamen's Lounge, where they presumably were either still exhibiting the effects of the field or proceeded to discuss the experiment in such graphic terms that it terrified the waitresses. So when the ship got back after this incident, they went to a bar, and like crazed men, they were telling the story and terrifying the waitresses. And this appeared in a local newspaper. Allende himself claims to have observed at least portions of this experiment while at sea on board the Liberty ship SS Andrew Forruthith, saying it wrong, a Matson Line ship out of Norfolk. This was sometime in October 1943. According to Allende, other men who were on the deck at the time witnessed the test were Chief Mate Mosley, Richard Splicey Pete Price, an 18 or 19-year-old sailor from Roanoke, Virginia, a man named Connolly from New England, possibly Boston. Rear Admiral Rawson Bennett, Navy Chief of Research, could supposedly verify that the experiment in fact occurred. The experimental ship was somehow mysteriously disappeared from its Philadelphia dock, showed up only minutes later in the Norfolk area. It then subsequently vanished again, only to reappear at its Philadelphia dock. Total elapsed time, a matter of minutes. So the ship disappeared and reappeared at its Philadelphia dock. Here's a picture of the docks. So what really happened? So this author goes through investigating the different witnesses. Did the Philadelphia experiment really happen the way Allende says it did? And if so, what are the implications with regard to the discovery and utilization of as yet undreamed of forms of energy? What kind of energy they used to take down the Twin Towers? Energy of a type and form which, as Allende suggests, might well be the power source utilized for those strange aerial objects which we refer to as UFOs. Perhaps the Navy has used this accident of transport to build your UFOs, it is a logical advance from any standpoint. Alright, now we're on the next chapter. Chapter 5, The Mysterious Senor Allende. Hope I'm making this little story clear enough. What happened, the implications to society, the world. That people that run our world, if this is true, are privy to this knowledge and this technology. And it's clear by the Georgia USA Guidestones that they want to reduce the population of the planet. It should be obvious to anybody. They have some serious plans for us. Look at the bottom of this. Global Biodiversity Assessment. Why would they be assessing all the resources of planet Earth? I have an answer. You're not going to like it. I was watching a video yesterday. And I do want to give credit where credit is due. Lisa Haven, she makes videos on YouTube. Put her name in there and watch some of the stuff she investigates. No one investigator, researcher, book reader like myself can find everything. So together, maybe we can find out the truth. But apparently, the United Nations has infiltrated all the cities and towns all over the world. And they're forming these associations like your Chamber of Commerce or the Agenda 21 or even the organizing, controlling the Boy Scouts. It goes on and on and on to the point where it's undeniable. The Model United Nations Association of Munich, Germany. Facebook. It is with great pleasure that we announce our country assignment for years Harvard World Model United Nations in Rome. They're forming these organizations and I guess programming the people to be involved in this new world order. It's in German here. It's got some pictures. So I was watching the Lisa Haven video on this United Nations thing, and she shows example after example after example after example of the towns and cities all over the United States with this Model United Nations Association Munich. Look at the top of this, where my finger is. So after I watched her video and she was pointing out these organizations, associations springing up all over the United States, coming out of the United Nations. I said, man, they must be doing this all over the world. So the country assignment for Harvard World Model United Nations 2016. It is with great pleasure that we announce our country assessment for next year's Harvard World Model United Nations in Rome. The LMU delegation will be representing the Bavarian Republic of Venezuela. We are very much looking forward to this highly interesting and challenging task. What challenging and interesting task coming from the United Nations? Knowing full well they're into Agenda 21, biodiversity, sustainability, new age, promoting homosexuality, transgenderism, trying to destroy Christianity, using crisis actors for terrorist shootings, trying to enact more legislation for police powers and gun control. I think in California was a press release that the state has overstepped the federal laws and passed some laws to enable them to confiscate guns at will. Something's going on. So if you go look up Lisa Haven, Model United Nations Association, her video, and again, do those words for any city or state near you, probably any country, but it's an obvious infiltration. Here's their little flag. Of every town, city in the world. And who's aware of this? What are they planning? Just not fond of secrets. And we all know they're trying to bring about a new age and a new world order. Even Obama and the Pope, all the people, are saying there's a crisis looming. We're all going to burn up because of global warming. When well-known world scientists, videos you can go watch, show chart after chart after chart that there is no measurable change in the Earth's temperature, period. They're fudging the data. There was one video with the Nobel literate, what's his name? I'll look it up. All right, it's on my computer screen here to my right. Nobel, Nobel, search these keywords. Laureate, Nobel literate, smashes the global warming hoax. Ivan, Giaever', Ivan Greniev's speech at the Nobel Literates meeting on July 1, 2015, points out the mistakes which Obama makes in his speeches about global warming. Now this is a smart guy. Who made this video? 1000 FROLLY is the author of that YouTube video. So Nobel literate smashes the global warming hoax. Just search that on YouTube. Or his name Ivor, last name Giaever', speech. So he's a Nobel literate, however you say that word. He's a much smarter guy than me. And he proves without a doubt. Documentation from satellites in space and other sources. There is no change. This GBA is an independent, peer-reviewed scientific analysis and assessment of biological and social economic aspects of biodiversity. It was commissioned by the United Nations Environmental Program, UNEP, and funded by the Global Environmental Facility. This summary for policymakers, your leaders, your mayors, presents main conclusions drawn by the assessment with the emphasis on those aspects that will be of interest to policymakers. That's what it says on the back of this book. This is a summary of a 900-plus page book. I thought I was ordering the 900 pages, but I got this little summary. I was disappointed. You got to pay attention when you're buying these books. Global Biodiversity Assessment from the United Nations and the gay agenda promotion, all those commercials and all those press releases, a little boy crying in tears because people are making fun of him because apparently he's gay and he's only 8. How can an 8-year-old kid be gay? Or some little kid writes in school a letter to the teacher that he loves his daddy and his daddy's boyfriend. It's all mind control propaganda. Coming from the same people who are doing this. The same people who are, look up Model United Nations. Please do not believe me. Look up Lisa Haven. Havan. Model United Nations Association, Lisa Haven. Watch. I could be doing it. I could have put in all the cities and states of the USA, but she's done it. And she shows you one. I just went to Germany to see if it was everywhere. It is everywhere. Look at the young people they're involving. A little bit of mind control going on. Meanwhile, we're aware 1970, 1962, 1943, 1926, the Freemasonic lodges have a magazine called The New Age. You can't make this stuff up. That was January 1970. This is July 1962. The Supreme Council, 33 degrees, favors. Pause your computer and read this stuff. They favor destroying Christianity. These are the people that are controlling the United Nations. Another Montauk book we've been going over. Lest we forget Aleister Crowley, the Book of the Law. Do as thou wilt is the whole of the law. Looks like a Rosy Crucian symbol here. And remember, he drew a picture, an image of the being he was in contact with, Hiawas. It looks exactly like Whitley Strieber's Gray, Alien. And the creature Hiawas said, I am the God of war and vengeance. The more than human power of Hiawas is shown by the influence of his master. The law of Thelema, do what thou wilt, shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. There is no law beyond do what thou wilt. So we know it's all pagan. We know the pagan stuff comes from Egypt. And there were just some Egyptian hieroglyphics in this book. Look at these characters. Look at the symbol on the top with the circle and the wings. That's Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris with the bird head. Just saying, things are a little odd. With Aleister Crowley, known as the evilest man alive, bragging about some of the horrific thing he did with children. So these people, the reason I point all that material, Freemasons, the New Age, Aleister Crowley was involved with NASA and the jet propulsion. So they're communicating with interdimensional beings. They're creating a nuclear bomb. And apparently these beings they're in communicato with are helping them with these time portals, opening up portals to another dimension. And after they did that, apparently a fleet of UFOs hovered over the White House. Coincidence? I know you're saying, Rick, go get on your medications. You must be crazy. Then go look up the UFO reporting site right now. And there must be crazy people everywhere because people are taking pictures and reporting these orange orbs, glowing white orbs, triangular shaped ships, cigar shaped motherships, and other kinds of saucers and activity in the sky. Opening in clouds look like a portal, and a ship flies out, or one flies into a portal that it opens and disappears. All right, back to this stuff. Here's a picture of Carlos Miguel Allende. And he's the one who wrote the letters to Jessup. It says the Allende letters. And this is Jessup. And so that would be the Allende's letters. That Jessup received those letters in the mail from Carlos Allende. And the Navy, the intelligence services, received a copy of Morris's book in the mail, The Case for UFOs, that was all marked up with all these corrections to Morris's opinion about UFOs. It was actually all handwritten, but the government had some printing company make these books. And when they, so the government got a hold of Morris Jessup, professor, and said, hey, we got one of your books. Somebody sent us all marked up. And they wanted to talk to him. And Morris Jessup looked at it, and he goes, wait a minute, I've been getting some letters from Mr. Allende, the Allende letters, and the handwriting looks the same. So Allende witnessed the Philadelphia experiment, and some kind of beings were critiquing Morris's book, The Case for UFOs. Sorry about the lengthy explanation. But when we read on here, it's important to know who the players are. And all this stuff I've been going over with all those books I just showed you. And the United Nations documentation that I've been showing on my videos. Agenda 21 book I've been showing and reading from. The sustainability, that lengthy document I've been showing. The biodiversity. And now we have the model United Nations Association groups. They're forming in all the towns and cities. Jade Helm putting troops and equipment all over the United States. Legislation being passed to increase gun control. Police powers, surveillance of we the people. Using crisis actors in situations like in France. So much more. Something's up, as I've been saying. Threatening to crash the economic system all the time. All right, moving on this book. Carl Allen, apparently he was in the Merchant Marine. Here's a picture of his documents. So this author in this book seems to really go through great lengths visiting D.C., the Congressional Library, another place where they document the stuff for the Navy, and the ID, and looking up to professors and the people who Carlos Allende said he talked to. And so it seems to be a well-written book. And again, is it true? Can they make a ship, a huge ship, move in time, disappear? Or is it all a hoax? Either situation is concerning. If it's all real, and they're doing all these other strange things, like sky spraying chemicals in the sky, HARP system, the transmitters being built everywhere, mesmerization, trance-type satanic images on TV shows, football halftime shows with the seemingly Shiva, Kali, demonic goddess dances, Madonna doing the devil demonic dances, Lady Gaga, during the Emmys, during the Grammys, and then the all-seeing eye on football and American Idol coming up at you. Conchita Wurst winning the Eurovision. It's a similar thing to the American Idol. Cochita means a female part. Wurst means a sausage, obviously a male part. With a face like Jesus, you need to go look this up. And a body and a woman with a silky dress singing the song Phoenix Rising with the words, "You can't stop us." And again, like I said, over there where they have CERN is the origin of the Frankenstein monster myth, as well as the headquarters for the Illuminati, with the 666 in the logo and the Shiva demonic god out front. How much more evidence do we need? In my videos, I've been going over it and over it and over it. And I'll keep on reading more books and getting more material out there. So anyways, it says here, so you want to know more about Einstein's great experiment. Do you know I actually shoved my hand up to the elbow into this unique field, force field, as that field flowed, surging powerfully in a counterclockwise direction. Another thing I found interesting about this book is there's a lot of detailed information about this, the math of this, the science. And as a techie myself, worked at a major aerospace company for 10 years, I'm picking up a tidbit here and a tidbit there on how this stuff works. So he put his arm into this flow of energy that creates the vortex and makes the ship disappear. And he felt this surging energy right up to his elbow. Allende was telling this story to Mr. Moore. Get the book? Page 110. So Allende says, I actually shoved my hand up to the elbow into this unique force field as the field flowed, surging powerfully in a counterclockwise direction around the little experimental Navy ship, the DE-173. I felt the push of that force field. So he felt the push of the force field against the solidness of my arm and hand outstretched into the humming, pulsing, propelling flow. Some kind of intense magnetic field flowing like a vortex that made the ship disappear. I watched the air all around the ship turn slightly, ever so slightly darker than all the other air. I saw, after a few minutes, a foggy green mist arise like a thin cloud. I think. This must have been a mist of atomic particles. I watched as thereafter the DE-173 became rapidly invisible to human eyes. And yet the precise shape of the keel and under hull of that ship remained. So he could see the hole in the water, but not the ship. You could look in the water and see there was a ship there, but you couldn't see the ship. Ship remained impressed into the ocean water as it and my own ship sped along somewhat side by side and close to inboards. Yes, today I can tell it, but then who cares? And there's a little note here on the bottom of this. This account closely resembles reports from survivors or observers of disappearances within the Bermuda Triangle, where the aberration may represent a natural or unnatural phenomenon on a larger scale. So like I say, once you start investigating this stuff, you find more and more coincidences. Investigations can be fatal, chapter 6. So apparently, Allende says that these people can verify his information. Dr. Albert Einstein, back then, probably still alive. Dr. B. Russell, my friend Dr. Franklin Reno, Chief Mate Mosley of the SF Forshworth, Richard Splicey Price, crew member, Connolly, crew member, Rear Admiral Ransom Bennett, and the present boss of the Navy, Burke. So he was seriously trying to say that this was all real. He even offered to be drugged with truth serum. So they talk about this stuff here, about investigating these witnesses and who they could try to find or could not find. Just moving on here, trying to get through this information, this video. Says here, the two surviving Allende letters, but also several pages of facsimile of De Vero annotated edition of Jessup's book, The Case for the UFO. I have that book. Crabb's conjunctures on the Philadelphia experiment. Crabb is another author, C-R-A-B-B, as set forth in this booklet, center around his belief that T. Townsend Brown, one of the inventors for flying saucers technology, a noted physicist and anti-gravity researcher, had at the very least something to do with the Invisibility Project, while head of the department under the Bureau of Ships in the Navy, that in fact, according to Crabb, the whole thing might actually have been Brown's idea. Closely following Crabb's lead in the matter came Gary Barker, flying saucer researcher, and I've been looking up these books and buying these books if I can find them at a reasonable price. So we may have more of these books by these different people who got involved in the Philadelphia experiment situation. Flying saucer researcher Gary Barker, B-A-R-K-E-R, and local publisher working out of Clarksburg, West Virginia, relying largely on information gleaned from Crabb, C-R-A-B-B, but adding some of his own. Barker took the initiative in 1963 in publishing what is still regarded today as one of the most valuable works on the topic of the Allende letters, The Strange Case of Dr. M.K. Jessup. Clarksburg, that's the name of the book. The Strange Case of Dr. M.K. Jessup. Clarksburg, West Virginia, Saucerian Press, 1963. So that was interesting, looking up the Saucerian Press. Apparently that publishing company was putting out quite a few different books on these issues, UFOs, aliens, and ships and such. Okay, unlike Crabb, who seems to have published his tract mostly as a service to interested BSRF members and associates, Barker was actually interested enough in the mystery to try and discover a few answers on his own. So like I said, it's fascinating to research this and go through the book after book after book, and tying it in with the current political affair of the world, of the people vying for a new world order and a new age, destroying Christianity, murdering Arabs and displacing them from the Middle East, shipping them to Europe and the United States with all kinds of fears on people's minds of the terrorist situation. Isn't that odd? They say that they're terrorists, but they're forcing our communities to accept them. I think the terrorists, or the Arabs, are just being used as material for the fear-mongering, and behind it is really the United Nations and the Zionists and all the others in cahoots on this series of Freemasonry and Satanism, the Vatican Jesuits, the Kabbalah people, Hollywood. You can only watch the TV and movie programming coming out of Hollywood to see it. Hunger Games, Divergent, the movie, and all the other shows. So are they behind all this? Is all this propaganda, and they're trying to bring about their one world government? We slaves, no middle class, and they rule after they eliminate 80% of the population. It's insane that they're doing nothing about the Fukushima radiation hitting the California coast all the way up to Alaska. Fish dying, fish are radioactive. Do not eat the fish or other seafood. Don't go in the beaches and the water there. Something horrific is happening on planet Earth. When I met Jessup in 1958, his mind seemed to be occupied with gaining proof as to the authenticity of certain psychic claims. So in all these things we know, like remote viewing with Tim Rifat, David Morehouse, and others, the government's heavily into the use of psychics. So was Hitler. This is part of the occult of the Freemasonic lodges, Illuminati, Mystery School of Babylon, Aleister Crowley's Hiowas creature that looks like a gray alien, growing Church of Satan, covens all over the United States, abducting people, sacrificing them to death, drinking their blood, eating their flesh. As crazy as it seems to be what it is, if you start researching. I was watching that video the other day, parts of it in other people's videos. Arizona Wilder with that David Icke interview. If you don't know what's going on with the Illuminati, Fritz Springmeier, Henry Macau in his book, Illuminati, the Cult That Hijacked the World, we keep looking at in my videos. Rabbi Marvin Antelman, Do You Eliminate the Opate? Opate means believe in God, who explains it all. So he told me of certain letters he had received purporting to contain information about a secret experiment by the military involving an application of the unified field theory. So I think during World War II, the government had employed Einstein full-time and many other scientists trying to get a one-up on Hitler and his technologies, who apparently was involved in communicating with some kind of other beings from under the earth, which we will go over in other videos. I have the books. The breakthrough came in the person of Dr. J. Manson Valentine, an oceanographer, zoologist, archaeologist, and long time, since 1945, student of the Bermuda Triangle, and a close friend of Dr. Jessup's during the time that Jessup had resided in Florida. So the Bermuda Triangle, all those weird disappearances and those things there, the type of physics or the energies that cause these problems might be the same. Jessup, feeling increasingly depressed and in need of someone to talk to, had spent a great deal of time with Dr. Valentine in the months before his tragic death. And it was during the course of these conversations that he had seen fit to confide in him many of his private thoughts and feelings concerning the Philadelphia experiment. Valentine was very possibly the last person to talk to Jessup before his death. So Jessup telling his friend, Dr. Valentine is of the opinion that Jessup was well informed about the actuality of the Philadelphia experiment and had had several conferences with Navy officers and Navy-employed scientists on the subject. He once commented to Valentine, "The experiment is very interesting, but awfully dangerous. It is too hard on the people involved. The use of the magnetic resonance is tantamount to temporary obliteration in our dimension, but it tends to get out of control." So when they're experimenting with these technologies, it gets out of control. Not too good. And apparently the CERN recently turned on to its highest power levels ever, blew a gasket. Look that up on YouTube. Apparently it blew holes right out of the side of the chambers, and they had to evacuate people above ground. Over there in Geneva, Switzerland, yet again. Apparently the home of the Frankenstein myth and the home of the Illuminati for 1,000 or more years. And the 666 in the logo, and the goddess of destruction, Shiva, out front. And of course they have those Shiva dances on YouTube by the employees, apparently. Some kind of weird demonstration, like what they do with Madonna, Beyonce, and Lady Gaga, and others, Katy Perry. Look at her, Katy Perry's satanic thing, riding that bull in the Super Bowl halftime show. It's all satanic, Luciferic. Actually, it is the equivalent of transference of matter into another level or dimension, and could represent a dimensional breakthrough if it were possible to control it. And remember, when they did this, right after this, they had the big fleet of UFOs hover over the White House. And apparently, when the Roswell craft crashed, they had one live being on it. I've been watching a video about that today. I'll try to get some information to share it, but I'm not finished watching the video. But apparently, they were in the military. One of the nurses could communicate with the alien being that looked like Kiowas, Apparently, these creatures don't have any sexual organs, and they're kind of rubbery, and they're not actually living entities. There's some kind of hybrid mechanical human rubbery thing that live a long time. So they say. Truth or a hoax? In either case, it's concerning. It is highly significant to note that Valentine's account of the experiment, based on information received directly from Dr. Jessup, agreed almost totally with Allende's in that the results of the experiment were astonishing. When the experiment first began to take effect, Valentine recounted, a hazy green light became evident, something like the reports we hear from survivors of incidents in the Triangle who tell of a luminous green mist. Soon the whole ship was full of this green haze, and the craft, together with its personnel, began disappearing from sight of those on the dock until its waterline was visible. Valentine said before his death, Jessup believed he was on the verge of discovering the scientific basis for whatever was happening. The explanation he felt was to be found in Einstein's field theory. In practice, Valentine said, electric and magnetic fields as follows. An electronic field created in a coil induces a magnetic field at right angles to the first. What I talked about earlier in this video. Each of these fields represents one plane of space, but since there are 3 planes of space, there must be a third field. This is the one they really don't have a handle on, the third field, that keeps all this stuff together in our reality. Perhaps a gravitational one. By hooking up electromagnetic generators so as to produce a magnetic pulse. And when you think about this, and they're building all those HARP transmitters and Gwen towers in secret, ground wave, cell phones, laptops, wireless, satellites in space, and so much more. Even little digits now on my new debit card. You have to put it in a different machine. Something's up. It might be possible to produce this third field through the principle of resonance. Jessup told me that he thought that the U.S. Navy had inadvertently stumbled across this. So they were trying to do one thing and something else happened. Although only a small section of Bermuda Triangle dealt with this topic, the appearance of Dr. Valentine's story created a veritable bombshell, the results of which have yet to be subside. Did it really happen? According to Valentine's report about what Dr. Jessup told him, the evidence seems strongly suggestive. In any event, public pressure on the U.S. Navy for information about the affair has resulted in the creation of a standard form letter, which is mailed routinely to any and all who inquire, and it has been estimated that as much as $2 million has been spent trying to put out the fire sparked by the legend. So apparently there's more books written on the subject. Another one here is by Berlitz. I guess that's Charles Berlitz on the front of this book. And the name of that book is Without a Trace by Doubleday, 1977. And here's a picture of that form the Navy puts out to send up people who inquire on the Philadelphia experiment. standard form. Telling people, no, it didn't happen. We wouldn't do that. Meanwhile, they're building those HARP transmitters, Alaska, South, Ireland area, Puerto Rico, up all over the world. What are they going to do? Turn on these transmitters and do what? All right, Berlitz goes on to say, in relation to the Philadelphia experiment itself, that a number of persons in and out of the Navy profess to remember the incident and are even willing to furnish more detailed information about it, except that they are unwilling to be quoted by name, a situation of which all investigators of this mystery can fully sympathize. You tell too much, you're going to wind up dead. Look what happened to Mr. Jessup. But supposing that such an experiment had been planned and attempted, could it have even partially succeeded? An examination of the scientific theory involved might offer a possible solution to this question. So the next chapter is the Einstein connection. And I read all that about the science of it. The elusive archives. So these guys go through some pretty tough, the unexpected key. I think it's a worthwhile book. I'm going to read some more of this book. Maybe do another video on it. The Philadelphia experiment. Did it happen? What did it have to do with the Montauk Project? The time tunnels they created. Experimenting with abducted young boys, thousands of them. The mind control projects. Apparently, according to Arizona Wilder, with her David Icke video, and many others, there could be 1 million mind control zombie slaves out there in our country, the United States, right now, who can be instructed to do whatever they're instructed to do. Something insane. Mass murdering people, shooting, I don't know. Can you imagine if there is 1 million mind-controlled people out there in the United States, all around the country? And of course now with the UPS, according to the internet, another video I was watching. Hang on, I'll get the name of that one. I mentioned it earlier. Still report, S-T-I-L, number 467, climate change hoax. Mr. Still also goes into details. So if you look up the Still report, you'll find the information. But apparently, UPS has converted some of its planes to passenger planes, and in the middle of the night, they're bringing over plane loads of Syrians, and 6 or 7 buses are awaiting them, and they're dispersing them throughout Pennsylvania, the United States. A lot of governors have already banned them from or tried to ban them from sending those people to their states. It just makes you wonder, what is going on? And then they're sending all those Syrians all over Europe. Germany's President Angela Merkel says she's confused why the German citizens don't want all these people. Meanwhile, they're making the Arabs out to be the demonic beings, when we know that they're the ones being murdered and fleeced and robbed of their land and their resources. And the Zionist state of Israel is bringing in people by the plane loads in a program called Aliyah. Go look it up on the jpost.com, the English edition of the Jerusalem Post. And you'll see people, a section called Aliyah. I've shown the pictures in my videos. People disembarking from all over the world. All the Jews, apparently, so-called, are moving back and taking over more of the Palestinian settlements and bombing them, killing them, and making them flee for their lives. They're doing the same thing in Syria now. They want to take down Assad. This was all brought about by 911. Wesley Clark, General Wesley Clark, said that he was told by a Pentagon insider all this was planned. 9/11 was all planned by these same Illuminati monsters trying to take over the world, and they have technologies maybe like this. And what's it got to do with Satanism and UFO and aliens? And if you believe Aleister Crowley, known as the evilest man alive, the Hiawassee person he was in communicado with, entity, in his drawings, looks like these gray aliens. A little bit too much to believe, you think? Rick Marrico reporting. Thank you for watching my videos. And if you want to support my work, there is a donation button in the comment section. Have a new year. This is the last day of 2015.